record button? Thanks. For some reason, it didn't work for me. Okay.
Maybe you want to set up as a host. I'll check on that.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, perfect. Now Google Docs signed me out. Just a second. Okay. Okay, welcome everyone to this week's analytics call. We have a couple of FYIs at the top of the agenda that I'm not gonna go through, so feel free to read through them by yourself. The first agenda item is also mine. I'm very happy to welcome Michael Luneux, our new senior front-end engineer for the Managed Analytics team. So Michael, please introduce yourself, where you were before GitLab, why you wanted to join GitLab, where you are located, and what you like to do in your spare time.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I was before GitLab, I was at Square and then Paperspace, respectively. Used to live in San Francisco, but recently, well, it's been a year and a half now, so not that recently, but moved back to Copenhagen, Denmark, where I am now. I wanted to join GitLab because I am really fond of automation and infrastructure that just works and has a nice focus on user experience. Outside of work, I love using my hands creatively in all sorts of different ways: cooking, eating, baking bread, coffee, and kombucha. I brew myself. I also like drawing and playing guitar, photography, all sorts of things, and enjoying nature. I guess a fun fact is that I like dressing up in different colored tights and jackets, especially for music festivals.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. We're super excited to have you on the team.
I'm very excited myself.
Great. The next agenda item is also mine. So I wanted to bring this up in this call. So the question is, how can we resolve front-end and back-end dependencies if we have issues that involve both front-end and back-end work being scheduled for the same milestone? So in the past, I think we already started by agreeing on an API spec, which is a good starting point in my opinion, and that works out pretty well. So in order to like being able to pick up front-end and back-end work simultaneously. And I think Ezekiel, he's probably not on the call today, obviously. It's middle of the night, but he also added some thoughts to this one. Maybe we could kick off the endpoint with a fixture spec, or integrating an endpoint that returns dummy or canned data. This means the front-end tests can be written earlier for the components that consume the data. So this, I think, being able to start working on the backend and the front-end part simultaneously works out pretty well. So we can also think about Ezekiel's proposal here. The other thing is where I believe we need to improve is the problem that sometimes backend changes get merged pretty late in the milestone. And as a result, frontend has very limited time to work on the integration. And the reason why I brought this up, so to provide a little bit more context, is the lead and cycle time, MR, which we implemented, or the feature which we implemented last milestone. We had the problem that the feature was broken up into, I think, 3 or 4 merge requests, and the last merge request got merged on the date of or pretty much on the last day of the milestone. And yeah, obviously we didn't have a lot of time to work on the integration on the front end side. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, how we can improve this. Is there any workaround or any process change that you can think of that would help us to improve this process and help us to work on the integration sooner?
Could I ask a question, Martin? You mentioned that there were four in the last lead time and cycle time story. There were four separate MRs, and the last one got merged pretty late. In the earlier MRs, was there not enough for the front end team to start work? Did they need the last MR to actually start?
I would need to look into the last MR in detail. I can pull it up a little afterwards.
I remember. So the last MR basically exposed the data via the API. So that was the last piece, and that exactly what was needed for the front end.
Yeah, so that was what I thought. So obviously, the last one was making the API accessible. And in an ideal world, everything works out of the box, but we all know that the integration, there's always something that you have to fix on the front end side to make it work. And especially in the last milestone, I think the last day of the milestone was a Friday. So making this possible is just it's just painful to have this kind of integration work being done on a Friday evening or Friday night. So maybe we can think of ways how we can improve this, because I think we already did a great job on the starting point where we agree on API spec, or even if we can start with a fixture spec like Ezekiel proposed. But I think the main pain point now is the integration part. So I don't think that's something that we need to answer now. I'm happy to open an issue for further discussion and ping everyone on the issue, but just something to think about.
So I thought our plan was to basically start establishing what is the API going to return. Kind of, we were going to build, start building mocks or something, just as a first step. Did we not do that here?
I think we did agree on. Are you referring to the API spec, like what the response data should look like? I think that's what we already did. For some reason, well, agreeing on that and then making the integration gonna like work and integrate backend and front end. There's always something that doesn't like fit together as designed. So there's always something where you need to tweak it a little bit. And if you need to do that on the last day, and then probably or possibly you would also need to change some front-end specs to work accordingly and make those small tweaks. This puts developer in a stressful situation if that's going to happen on the last day of the milestone. So I don't really want to put the hard deadline on the backend work and say, hey, backend needs to be done on this particular date. But maybe we can, I don't know. It's a good question how we can resolve this.
What sort of tools do we have to work with this? Do we have something that we can continuously update as we start implementing? So whatever the backend is implementing, the front end will have readily at hand when it's done. So like a slow moving integration instead of like now it's done and then everything. Try to integrate everything at that point.
I guess sometimes what we would do is just rebase whatever branch backend is working on. But then even if you like split up front end in multiple MMRs, then you would need to have a lot of overhead to rebase all those branches and keep them in sync. So that's one potential solution. And for a small feature like this, that's probably doable. But for bigger features, I think this is adding too much overhead.
Another question I have here, and I guess neither Akriti nor Ezekiel are on this call, so we might not have a clear answer. Was the issue too big? Should we have split this up more, just for faster execution?
It's a good question. I'm not sure if that was the real problem here. I mean, we did not split the issue up. We broke the issue down into like multiple MRs, which got merged one after each other. So I'm not sure if the backend work, if it would have been possible to like, for example, I think what we did was we delivered 2 metrics. So I don't know if it would have made sense to start delivering 1 metrics and then get this out and then work on the second metrics, as opposed to integrating both metrics at the same time. Not sure if that would have helped a lot. Good question.
It's the exact same thing I'm wondering. Well, I'll post a comment on that issue and just ask for some feedback on it.
Yeah. Cool. We can also, I think Ezekiel also brought this up in the retro, so we can also continue discussing this in the last milestones retrospective.
That's probably an even better idea. Let's do that.
Okay. Cool. So the next item is any blockers or items at risk. Seems like there's no items under this agenda point. Anyone has any blockers she wants to talk about today? Nope. It's even better.
Let's say, I mean, the main risk item seems to me is just that we need to get a final kind of proposal for the generic analytics report page story. The new member single series issue, so that we can get cracking on that.
In terms of data structure and data format.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is we don't need to solve all problems here. We need to do just enough in order to complete this kind of set of 3 stories that we're working on related to this in this iteration. So narrowing the scope of the proposal to being just enough to deliver on that, and then moving forward. I think someone did comment on that issue over the weekend. I haven't seen the latest ones yet, but hopefully we're getting close.
I think both Pavel and Adam have contributed a couple of ideas as far as I remember. So I'm thinking we're still in the phase where we need to decide which approach we want to follow. But Dan is probably the person who knows more about this topic.
I still need to get caught up on the latest discussion. So there was quite a bit of discussion at the end of last week. So I'm actually not sure I am the most up to date.
Okay. Let's follow up async afterwards. Okay. Next item is on deck issues. Hand it over to John Mason. I see you have added a few items to this topic.
John Mason, you're on mute.
Thanks. The issues that we'll be working on primarily next are all of those bullet points under the epic that we have around that generic report page. But I wanted to give a few kind of looks ahead at things that you haven't seen in this meeting here. So the first one is multiple value streams per group. This is something I'm hoping we'll take on in 13.2. And the main idea here is that with the story that we're working on to add filters to value stream analytics in this milestone, we'll be able to start seeing our group's own measures by filtering on the group analytics label. And so we'll start to be able to get a much better look at what value stream analytics can tell us about our own process. But one limitation that's left is that we can't customize that value stream without changing it for everybody else in the group. And that may make ourselves and other groups reluctant to do very much with this feature. So the idea is to allow us at the group level to create multiple value streams. And that way, each individual group can begin playing with their own configurations of the value streams. And we should get a lot more feedback internally on this feature, which will be really important to troubleshoot problems that we know we have with the calculations, to get feedback on missing configuration options that people would care about, and so on, so that they can really start to model their own processes and focus on what they believe to be hot spots in their own processes. So we don't want this to be really intrusive. So the way that Nick proposed to handle it is with just a drop down in the upper right that would default to just having the group name in it. But then you could select the option to create a new value stream here, give it a name, and have multiple value streams. So in the GitLab.org group, we could have value streams for each of the various analytics teams, and they could modify the configuration settings for each. The idea is that we would just, we'll hide this behind a feature flag, release it just to GitLab.org initially, and use it as a vehicle to engage with other teams and get more feedback about this feature. And after that, we'll just continue to make slow and steady progress on value stream analytics, primarily making sure that we have the calculations right and the level of configurability that we need, and so on with it. So that's the first one. Any questions on this?
I have a question regarding creating new value streams. Would that be something that we want to do inline on the value stream analytics page, or would that happen under a configuration page or a settings page?
No, instead of hiding it behind the settings where you would have to have administrative access to configure it, the idea is to put it right here on the page so that you can do it very easily from there.
Okay, so I would be able as a user to modify the current value stream setting and then just save it or create a new one from scratch and then save it under an arbitrary name.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And this also touches some work we're starting to explore with Gabe's team and Plan, where they're trying to look for ways of doing issue workflows, and may leverage value stream analytics to describe issue workflows in the future. All right, the next item is direct navigation to report pages. This is not something I expect us to do in 13.2, but I wanted to show a picture here so that you could see sort of the direction we're headed in with these report pages. So the first set of stories around the report pages are really as a landing place for embedded experiences. We've got the recent activity on the group page. We've talked about having drill in from the inbox analytics, from the to-dos area. Throughout the product, there'll be other places where we land. But once we have landed, it would be nice to be able to see what metrics are available to you and to navigate to them. Eventually, the report pages become part of a dashboard experience where we've got 4 to 6 charts on a page. You drill into the chart and you land in the report page to actually give that kind of drill in detail. But before we get there, sort of a lower bar is to just provide direct navigation to the various metrics that we have available on those report pages, and to move between them quickly. So another way of thinking about this is it's an improvement over the drop-down list that you have in Insights, right? If you go to the Insights page today, there's all these different pages and reports. Well, instead of having that drop-down there, you would have an experience like this where you could find the different report pages, and this gives us a clear path to migrate that Insights functionality into the generic report pages as well. So again, not intended for work in 13.2, but I wanted to give a picture of sort of where we were headed with this, so that we could be thinking about this. Nick is out on vacation this week, and he has some other time off this month as well. So I don't think we're going to be in the right place to execute this on 13.2, not just from the standpoint of having designs finalized, but also because we don't have enough content to make this the list of reports very interesting yet. But as we start migrating stuff from Insights, as we use this generic reports page from more places, we'll have enough content here to justify an experience like this.
Would this be located
Questions?
under? Would this be located under the group namespace, or would this be on the instance namespace? So, reason I'm asking is some of the report pages, I feel like some of the report pages would be tied to a particular group. For example, the group activity or group recent activity new merge requests, or group recent activity members. Those counts would be depending on a group, right? So by clicking on this report, would you have the possibility to select the group on the reports page, or would this be already being displayed in the context of a group?
That's a great question. So I would say we haven't done nearly enough thinking about this. This is very early, but in the discussion about the generics reports page, I suggested that the URL that those should live in would be sitting above the group, because we're going to have some reports that are instance level reports. And I think the same thing is true here, that some of this sits above. Now, there are a couple of ways we could handle group selection. One of them is that instead of a flat list here, we have more of a tree, so that you could navigate kind of groups of metrics. I think if you had just a flat list here, it might be very hard to find the kind of metric that you want. So it seems very likely to me that we would actually implement this as some kind of tree. Another thing that we could do is also move group selection as a widget into the report pages if we wanted to do that, and make that simpler as well. We haven't got nearly that far, but an excellent question. just in terms of what I'll be working on this week in terms of issue breakdown. In the generics analytics report page, you can see we already have some bulleted points for things that will become issues. I will start breaking down and turning these kinds of things into issues. One of the ones that I'll be focusing on first is around the table. We added the table to issue analytics in this last milestone. The idea is to take that kind of work and make it available in the generic report pages as well, and then proceed to make those charts clickable and so on. So I'll be working on that this week. If there are specific ones of these that you have questions about and would like to see me work on sooner than others, please ping me and let me know. But that's what I expect to be working on this week as far as that goes. I did have a conversation with both Jeremy and Eric in the product management team about doing some combining of categories. So today we have 2 categories, DevOps reports and insights. We are going to look at combining those categories into a single category that will mostly be around this sort of dashboarding and reports pages type functionality. And there'll be an MR. We've already started an MR on that. There'll be more discussion on that forthcoming this week. All right, I'll hand it back over to Martin. Let's see.
Great. Thanks, John Mason, for the on-deck issue walkthrough. The next agenda item is, do we have any interesting problems or solutions that anyone wants to talk about? Any demos or cool stuff someone wants to share? Nothing? Okay. Good. So since we don't have any bonus content, I think that's it for this week. Cool. In that case, wish you all a good rest of your day. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.